Welcome back to Gamecasters. Today I'm going to be doing a video on my Zephyr Prime build. Now, this is a build that I have ran through Steel Path Circuit, and Duviri, and it has held up extraordinarily well against enemies that are well into the thousands. I know it probably doesn't match up to some of the more endurance run builds, but this is something more friendly to newer players. Well, new-ish. I don't want to say new players, but there are a couple of cards in here that may not be as easily obtainable to new players unless you trade for them or grind for them. Ones such as Overextended and your primed cards, um, even the ones that you get from the syndicates, assuming that you've joined the syndicate that you can get those cards from. For anyone that's not aware, eventually you gain the ability to subsume abilities onto other Warframes, hence why I have a augment card from Titania on my Zephyr. Now, some of the more experienced players might look at my choice of subsume ability here and question it a little bit. For me, this is what has personally worked really well. I do this mainly for crowd control. It works really good for keeping the enemies in check in survival defense. I use it a lot for mirror defense and those type of missions. Ones where the enemies are going to be in large numbers is what this build runs off of. It works good for movement-based missions. Like I said, it's going to handle enemies well into the thousands, so regardless of what you're needing it for, it will hold up as far as survivability goes. Zephyr handles really well because of her turbulence and the mod sets that I have running for this. So to start off, I know rejuvenation probably is going to be one big question a lot of people are going to ask about. Um, Normally, I would be running corrosive projection on this build, but I was running rejuvenation for Steel Path Circuit because uh, her group did not have the best Warframe selection for Steel Path, so I kind of swapped some things over to help with survivability on that. But normally rejuvenation would be swapped out for corrosive projection. Your aura card can kind of be a little flexible with this build. Ones that work really well would be energy siphon, corrosive projection, even just squad supportive ones. I haven't really messed around too much with Mecha Empowered. It's more of a niche card. Combat Discipline's not bad, but it heavily relies on the fact that you have a healing source in your group. So if you have a Spectre that has like Wisp or Trinity or something like that on it, um, probably wouldn't recommend a melee setup for it. It could work, but generally you'll see it later in the video, but you shoot the tornadoes in order to gain the most efficiency out of the build. Things like rifle amp or shotgun or sniper amps will work. Just gaining that extra damage for whatever weapon you're using for it, especially if you may not have all the cards that are needed for this build. Overextended is a huge boost to this build. You essentially focus entirely on range and duration for this build. Efficiency is just nice for keeping the energy flowing. So the general concept is you want to cast Airburst. That is going to pull enemies in. With the way I have it set up, I hit a 22-meter radius, and then the damage grows off of that. But then I follow up Airburst with Spellbind, which is subsumed from Titania onto my Zephyr in order to gain an additional 40% to my radius of my next casted ability. Now, this is where Spellbound Harvest comes in. Spellbind Augment, hitting at least 4 enemies with Spellbind grants Titania 50 energy. The next cast has a 40% ability range. So this already helps severely with the efficiency and then allows me to hit even more enemies with Airburst. Once I run that first cycle of these two abilities, I will then, if there's not any enemies left, I will cast another Airburst, followed by Spellbind, and then cast the Tornadoes. And then if you want to, you can repeat that combo to cast Turbulence because you can get a even larger shield radius. It's not required, but it's helpful for defense targets and stuff like that because it can help prevent damage to the target and give you a little bit of flexibility moving around the target, helping with damage protection. But regardless, as long as you're running Turbulence and it's turned on, you're pretty much immune to ranged attacks. So, beyond that, I'll show you guys how that all runs. Obviously, if you're a newer player, primed continuity and prime flow can be swapped out for just the regular continuity and flow cards. Obviously, you'll take a slight hit, but even as you can tell, I don't have either of these fully leveled out, and it still performs incredibly well. Good old endo economy over here, and I have a tendency of wanting to run all the Warframes because I like to try everything out and experiment a lot. So you'll see a lot of random cards that are just fully leveled up in here because I experiment a lot. But regular flow is still going to give you 100% energy. My primed flow is at 151, but your max energy really isn't going to hurt too bad as long as you have another source of efficiency in here. Streamline helps with that. And then another thing that helps with survivability is Augur Reach. Plus, I gain additional ability range off of that, but energy spent on abilities is converted to shields. This build spams abilities so often that this alone can keep you alive, but that in conjunction with Turbulence, your survivability is through the roof. Those two things are all you will ever really need. Hunter Adrenaline's not a necessary card, but it's just what I prefer running on there. It's extra energy economy, and my companion gains extra damage on enemies that are affected by Slash. So, Slash being as common of a stat in there, it's just nice getting that extra little damage from companions. But like I said, it's not a absolute must-have for the build. Again, what you're wanting is range and duration on your stuff. Duration just helps so you're not having to spam your tornadoes and turbulence all the time. Keeps you down on the energy efficiency side because you're going to be casting Airburst and Spellbind the most. Prime continuity just helps me keep the tornadoes out for longer. I get 34 seconds on them. You can make that even longer, which will bring me to the Archon shards. Arcanes, I personally use Augmented. It's just a little extra damage off my abilities as it builds up through a mission. It's not, if you want something that gives you more duration, by all means go for that, or you could switch it out for Arcane Energize for more energy efficiency. You have a little bit of wiggle room. Personally, I use Arcane Rise, but I use the Phantasma and high reload weapons a lot. So Phantasma dumps its mag super fast, which means that procs pretty much all the time, which gives me 150% damage to my primary weapons for 24 seconds. Now, as far as which I have Ignis on here at the moment because I had that for Duviri's Still Pass circuit. Archon Shards, I do have a Tau Forged on for ability duration. Then I just have a regular one for ability duration. I have a blue for energy max, and then I have 2 yellows for effectiveness on energy orbs. You could do a little bit of wiggle room with those two. I just have mine set up to where I always have energy. I It's very rare that I ever run out of energy on this build, especially if I'm in a group with other players. You get a Harrow or someone run a Nourish or pretty much any character that gives you energy. This build will thrive off of that team combination. So if you're lucky enough to get into a squad with someone who is running an energy buff ability, this build will it will perform to its maximum capabilities, to put it simply. Um, Personally, I like running the Latum. It's one of my favorite secondary weapons in the game. It's also great for Archon hunts and stuff like that. And then I also enjoy the Inodim, especially now that TennoCreate is in the game. So that has made it incredibly useful. Which leads me back to the aura cards. If you want to run melee, by all means, Steel Charge is a perfectly viable aura card for this. Especially combined with a good melee weapon, because the fact that Zephyr pulls all the enemies to her. Just keep in mind that if you have the tornadoes out, the tornadoes will lift those enemies into the air. But even if you were to just fire off airburst, you could just cluster all the enemies together and melee them to death. So however you prefer to play. 9 times out of 10 though, if you're running this for crowd control, you're going to be keeping the tornadoes up. Generally, you want to keep those stationary and then cast your airburst into the center of them, because then the tornadoes will just keep them under control as they're near you. And then the tornadoes keeping them by you allows you to almost guaranteed get Spellbind off on at least 4 enemies, gain your energy back from Spellbound Harvest, and then gain that radius boost, and there you go. My tornadoes have a 70-meter radius, and then you top that off with another 40% when that fires off. The tornadoes are extraordinarily useful. Airburst doesn't have the largest range, but again, that's why I personally prefer Spellbind. But if you feel like switching that out, by all means. Again, this is just a build that I run. Another optional card I could recommend is, if you don't enjoy Hunter Adrenaline on this build, you can always run Funnel Clouds or Airburst rounds. Both of those are completely viable. Just keep in mind, if you run Airburst rounds, you want a good secondary, but you will get extra damage for your weapon, which would in turn will mean you can kill the enemies that are grabbed by your tornadoes even faster. So, beyond that, let's just go ahead and take a dive into we'll just jump into some good old Elite Sanctuary Onslaught just to show you guys how this runs, to give you an idea. But again, like I said, I've ran this in Steel Path enemies upwards of over the thousands and have had no issues keeping it active. Personally, I run Xeneric for Wellspring. It's nice for the initial, because I haven't crazily polarized my Zephyr yet, so I don't have a ton of starting energy. But if you've formed your Zephyr, it eventually just gets to the point where your starting energy will be saving you a lot of stress. So conveniently, I managed to get into a Sanctuary Onslaught with Infected, so this will work out swimmingly. There you guys are. Alright. Cast Air Burst. Tornadoes up. Pop another Air Burst, and cast Spellbind. I can just keep casting Spellbind if I'd like to keep my energy up. Fire into tornadoes. And rinse and repeat. Then my energy economy is starting to finally kick in. And yeah, that's running Zephyr for you. So let me just jump over here somewhere a little bit more open. General consensus is you cast Air Burst, fire off Spellbind, which then means your next cast is going to have that increased range, and then you just cycle back to Air Burst, pull in some more enemies, Spellbind, then I can fire off Turbulence, and rinse and repeat. That you're playing Zephyr at that point. Incredible crowd control, and again, anything that's shooting at you is really not even going to be able to hurt you with this build. The only time it will fail on you is if you forget to keep Turbulence up. The only downside I have with Zephyr is the fact that you can't recast Turbulence until the cooldown on it has ran out. Similar to how Rhino's Roar works. So that's usually what ends up getting me. I tend to like cast buff abilities as often as I can, and having ones that I can't re-up until they're ready to re-up always gets me. But just keep an eye on that timer, make sure you recast it when it drops, and you'll be fine. If it does drop, you will notice very quickly. When I was running the Still Pass circuit, I had a couple of times where I was doing just fine, and then suddenly I just get one hit by something because I completely forgot to keep Turbulence up. But that's how you run Zephyr Prime with this build that I have. If you enjoy it, let me know in the comments below, or if you have any suggestions for how to tweak it even better, by all means, I am open to suggestions. But personally, that's what has worked for me so far. Zephyr's quickly became one of my favorite Warframes to play. Heck, even as you can see, I don't have this one formed. I did get lucky with the pre-polarized slots, so that was nice, having my aura slot and 4 of these crafted into polarity right out the gate was really nice, and it worked out for the cards that I use. But yeah, that's Zephyr Prime for you guys. Again, if you have any suggestions, leave them down below. If you've tried out the build, let me know how you like it. It's pretty mindless. It's just cast your abilities, cast them in the right order, and you will succeed at crowd control. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you guys in the next one.